All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining to this SAP community call. My name is Menina Chow. I'm part of the SAP community team, your host today, and we are hearing from Silvio Arcangeli, who is joining us from the product management team for SAP Data Intelligence, and we'll be talking about hybrid data management. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Feel free to chat with us, post your questions in Q&A. We also have Lynn Lintelman as a support to be addressing your questions, and we'll also have dedicated time at the end to have a Q&A session with you. With that, happy to hand over to you, Silvio.
Thank you, Mina. Thanks a lot for inviting us, and thank you guys for joining. Really happy to be with you today. So today we're going to talk about a very important topic for SAP data management strategy overall, which is hybrid data management and how we will cover it with SAP Data Intelligence in particular. So of course, usual disclaimer, I will be mentioning roadmap from time to time. So always keep in mind whenever I say something about roadmap items that that plans can change as usual. And then let's just start, first of all, by clarifying why do we care so much about data management. It may look trivial, but at SAP, we think that data management is actually crucial for improving processes, right? And I think that this is a fundamental difference compared to, for example, most of the technology players out there. So in our view, data management is really the critical enabler to ensure that our customers can turn data into insights, and then, very important also, operationalize those insights within concrete real-life business processes, which is where they derive the value out of that, right? And this is how we feed a virtuous loop, because data-driven processes then will produce even more fine-grained and contextualized data that can feed a virtuous loop. And this is really the final objective, and it all looks, let's say, very promising. But we know that there are things happening right now on the IT side, right? So most of our customers these days are transitioning to the cloud, and this is changing, of course, a lot in terms of how we approach things and how we solve technical problems. So more than 80% in particular. And as you know, for this year in particular at SAP, we have a very strong strategy to support the transition to the cloud for our customer base. And at the same time, we also know that the data is also growing in terms of diversity and distribution. And we hear constantly feedbacks from our customers that tell us that it's more and more difficult actually to realize that virtuous loop that I showed at the beginning. So it's a dream, let's say, but it's very difficult to achieve that. I tried to actually build a more detailed taxonomy of all of the issues that I see enterprises are facing in these days whenever they try and get to a smarter, let's say, data-driven approach, and whenever they try and achieve a higher and better value out of their data. So number one issue is always integration. It looks trivial, but it's not, because we know that today, whenever you want to approach an innovation project, for example, to try and better leverage your data in order to achieve some business insights, typically you have to put together data of different nature, like unstructured, structured, and streaming from different locations. And if you approach this with a traditional tool set, normally this will require 2 or 3 different tools, one for each kind of data. That's where the complexity starts to explode already. A second very important point, which is quite new compared to traditional data warehousing days, is how we do the processing of the data itself. So think of all of those scenarios where, for example, some parts of the data can be processed using HANA engines in memory, but for some other portions of data, we prefer using some Python, for example, to apply some machine learning. Those are very common scenarios in these days. In order to achieve certain business outcomes, we need to be able to combine together different processing engines, and often different technologies. Then another issue, which in my view is probably the most underestimated one, which is often causing failures on projects, is even the discovery of the data itself. So it's very easy in these days to build a proof of concept where we show to the business that a certain idea, applying a certain algorithm to a bunch of data sets, could be very promising and could deliver a lot of value. But then understanding the exact nuance and semantics of the data in production and understanding its reliability is a very different story, and making sure that all of the stakeholders can actually work on the data in a reliable way. So first of all, how we enable all of the relevant people in discovering the data sets that they have available and their meaning and their semantics. Second point, how we can enable them to actually test and check the quality of those data sets. So how reliable they are, and can they rely on a certain data set, for example, to build an algorithm that has to then take autonomous decisions within a concrete business process, which requires a very different degree of data quality compared to the traditional data warehousing days when we had the time to actually massage the data a little bit before building the reports, right? And then another growing concern is compliance. So think of just answering that simple question: where in my entire landscape am I storing personal information belonging to a certain German citizen, for example, right? So it's a very simple question with a very complex answer. And the more we make our landscapes more powerful, the more complex this answer becomes, right? So there is a tension actually between the degree of flexibility that we add in our landscapes and the amount of governance that we have to put in place in order to control that everything stays within what the regulations mandate, right? Finally, last but not least, I would say the operations concern. So we already said everybody's moving to the cloud in these days. In many cases, we see customers even using different cloud providers, or different applications in different clouds, and some portion of the landscape still staying on premise. So this is adding again a lot of flexibility and a lot of agility on delivering new functionality and improving the business processes overall. But how do we scale the data operations across these distributed landscapes? So this is another very significant challenge. So if you put together all of these challenges, I hope you get a quite complete picture of the kind of challenge that we have today as data management practitioners in order to become enablers rather than roadblocks, right, to enterprise innovation. I summarized this point in this diagram showing what's happening to the data management domain. So we've been talking about integration for several years now. So I first of all wanted to distinguish different kinds of integration to make sure that this is clear to everybody in this call. So we often talk about application integration. This is a domain where we connect transactional applications between themselves, and that's what we solve in the SAP space with the SAP Integration Suite. That is a very relevant suite of products that continues to evolve and to innovate. Then there is a second domain that has always been separate and running side by side to the application integration domain, and that's the data integration domain. So this was the domain of traditional ETL tools that we were using for moving data from the transactional stack towards the analytical stack. So traditionally Data Services and Information Steward for SAP, right? So moving the data and then governing the quality and profiling of that data. So if you think of all of the challenges that I described earlier, what we are saying is that we are seeing the rise of a very new domain in these days, and that's what at SAP we call data orchestration. In other industry contexts, you might also read about enterprise data fabrics, which is an expression often used by analysts, or sometimes about enterprise data hubs. That was another expression that was used till a couple of years ago, perhaps. And anyway, all different nuances of the same concept, which is, let's say, an augmented approach to data integration, which wants to target also different kinds of data. So think of how we deal with streaming, how we deal with unstructured, how we deal with machine learning on top of all of those different data. And most importantly, I would say, how we can connect insights back to the transactional processes, which is really the big news compared to the traditional analytics days. Because back in the days where the analytics and transactional domain were very separated, the data integration domain and the whole OLAP stack were just needed for feeding reports, for feeding dashboards typically. Whereas today, if you look at all of the recent data-driven projects that most enterprises are already implementing, usually the endpoint is not just a dashboard. We always want also to go back to the transactional stack and drive an actual process and take actions, right? And that's where SAP can deliver a lot of added value, because we understand business processes, and therefore we understand, I think, better than anybody else, actually, how to leverage analytics in order to drive business processes beyond just dashboarding. So that's why we are talking about data orchestration these days as a way to extend traditional data integration. So data orchestration, in our view, includes data integration, but goes beyond it, because it includes means, so technology capability to integrate all of the data. So not just the structured application data, but also all of the streaming and unstructured data which you have available in your enterprise. And it includes also capabilities to orchestrate the processing of that data. So combining any mix of heterogeneous engines that can be effective on your particular combination of data sets. And finally, last but not least, it includes capabilities to link back insights to the transactional applications and the transactional processes. So in our case, for example, this means that using data intelligence, you will be able to feed some analytical insights to, for example, SAP Integration Suite, to then orchestrate a full-blown transactional workflow, or directly into the ABAP stack, for example, of an S4 system, or trigger the execution of some functionality in an SAP cloud application like Ariba or Concur, or you name it, right? So this is the overall idea, and that's what we were addressing with SAP Data Intelligence. So Data Intelligence wants to solve all of these three bubbles, and it aims at solving all of the challenges that I explained in the previous slides. And here we start to come also to the hybrid topic, right? Because if we look at what we had in our on-premise portfolio, you know that we had various SAP tools that were used, sometimes in combination, sometimes in a standalone way, in order to solve data integration and data cataloging or data governance, right, as you want to call it. So we were talking about SAP Data Services as our, let's say, general purpose ETL tool, inherited from the business objects acquisition, of course. And we had SAP Landscape Transformation Replication Server, also known as SAT for between friends, in order to move data out of ABAP systems or between ABAP systems. And we were also using SAP HANA Smart Data Integration for data ingestion and integration into SAP HANA on-premise in particular. Similarly, for data cataloging, on the cataloging side, our main tool was Information Steward, always used in combination with data services. We also had SAP HANA Smart Data Quality that I didn't even mention in this slide, which was, let's say, the equivalent functionality to SDI for governance. And we had a HANA plugin that was called SAP HANA Agile Data Preparation that we were using for data preparation jobs in particular, right? So all of the functional scope of these various different tools, as we move to the cloud, is converging to one single solution, which is called SAP Data Intelligence. So our idea and vision with SAP Data Intelligence is that we are converging integration and cataloging into one single unified solution that will also cover data processing, and does also cover data processing, actually, meaning that it also covers all of the aspects related to how we orchestrate processing engines on top of the data, after integrating them, after cataloging them. Okay, so I wanted to clearly state this because I think this is a major step forward from the SAP perspective. We want to simplify the data management landscape as much as possible, and you can be confident that investing in the intelligence, you are not just investing in a technology which is already quite mature today, because it's a cloud technology that has been there for 3 years now, but you're also investing in the future technology of SAP, because that's what will be the reference flagship data management technology for SAP going forward. So now going into a little bit more detail on the intelligence itself, as I sort of introduced, we are unifying various capabilities within one single tool. Okay, the three main pillars that you find in the intelligence in terms of actual technical capabilities are data integration. So you find a pipelining engine that covers integration and movement of any kind of data, structured, unstructured, and streaming. So you can see it as a sort of a pipelining approach that covers also what we would do with a cloud ETL, but goes beyond traditional ETL, because it's not limited to just batch or near real time. It's not limited to just structured data. It can also do event driven. It can also do message based communication, and it can also move unstructured documents. At the same time, the same pipelining engine is also used for orchestrating different processing engines between the various data sets. And in the very same products, we also have the data catalog capability. So with data discovery, classification, profiling, and preparation. So quickly on the integration side, as I said, our commitment is to cover with the same degree of focus, I would say, structured, unstructured, and streaming. And in this picture, you find a subset of the sources that we support out of the box, just to give you a quick idea of the kind of support that you will find in the tool. So all of the databases are there, of course, but also all of the cloud object stores, and also all of the most common messaging systems like Kafka, MQTT, Google PubSub, and so on, and all of the cloud data warehouses as well. So you find Google BigQuery, you find Redshift. Soon we will add also Snowflake and Teradata coming soon. On the processing side, data intelligence natively supports Python and R as internal engines, and actually also Node.js and Go. So you have a wide choice, let's say, of technologies that you can use for factoring in processing algorithms on top of the data that you're moving. But at the same time, you can also orchestrate the execution of external machine learning engines, external TensorFlow clusters, for example. And of course, you can also orchestrate within the same pipelines HANA machine learning, HANA graph, HANA streaming analytics, and all of the SAP proprietary engines. Last but not least, I mentioned about data cataloging. So this is another concept where I think we took a very differentiating route compared to what you see in the market. So if you look at the main competitors and the hyperscalers in particular, normally data catalog is always treated as a standalone topic. So you would typically find one product or service for integration, a separate product or service or set of services for processing, and then a separate dedicated product for cataloging, right? In our view, these three pillars do really go together, because if you don't have a proper cataloging capability, you will not be able to develop and to operationalize meaningful models on top of the data that you integrate. So the three aspects are very strictly intertwined, and cataloging is needed as an enabler to the other two, right? And you will see that there are also very nice synergies in having the catalog built into the same tool where we also deal with integration. Knowing that if you want, you can also use the intelligence even just for pure data cataloging, for example, because the product is flexible. So if you only instantiate a minimum cluster of DI and you only use it for cataloging, you will not be paying for anything else, right? So you're not paying for the functionality that you're not using. But But if you want, of course, you can use those functionalities in combination, and that's why we built them together. So the main scenarios for adopting data intelligence in these days that we're seeing are mostly data integration around SAP in general. So most of our customers are using data intelligence as sort of a frontier product. So you can see it really as a data middleware that acts as the integration point between SAP and anything else. So whenever you have to mix SAP data with non-SAP data, or SAP engines with non-SAP engines, SAP metadata with non-SAP catalogs, right? So all of these cases justify and the use of the intelligence, because it will deliver a lot of value if you adopt it in those scenarios. Another usual scenario is adopting the intelligence as a sort of data middleware combined with the other tools from the SAP Business Technology Platform, and in particular the tools from the HANA Analytics portfolio. So I'm talking about HANA Cloud, Data Warehouse Cloud, and SAP Analytics Cloud, where the synergy with the intelligence is very, very strong. So for example, if you think of how we integrate data in and out of Data Warehouse Cloud, there is an embedded integration functionality in the Data Warehouse Cloud itself, which is actually built on the intelligence. So which is a subset basically of functionality of the intelligence that has been embedded within the Data Warehouse Cloud. And then if you want the full flexibility, you can migrate from that embedded version to the full use version of DI to get the full-fledged power of the product. And you will see more and more synergies coming up in the next quarters between these tools. And finally, the topic of today, the hybrid data management aspect. So for us, a key principle is to help our customers to reuse as much as possible all of the investments that they made in SAP on-premise tools while they transition to the cloud. And this is really what I would like to dig a little bit deeper today. So as I said, first principle for us, safeguard past investments. So if you think of data services, it's probably one of the most widely adopted products that SAP ever built. And we have thousands and thousands of customers who are using it productively since several years. And we want to make sure that all of the effort and money that customers spend on SAP Data Services and SAP Information Steward is safe and can be safely leveraged and reused while customers transition to the cloud, as I said. This means that we have built and developed the intelligence in a way to reuse all of the functionality of those on-premise tools. So the idea is that you can start moving to the cloud with your applications and your data. New scenarios that require cloud data management will be implemented straight on the intelligence, but at the same time, from the intelligence, you can reuse everything that you've done previously in the services and information steward on-premise, while those tools continue to exist in the relevant on-premise landscapes until one day in the future, when perhaps you will not have anything on-premise anymore, and you will be able to shut down completely your on-premise landscape, right? But we think that that future is actually far away. So we think that some bits and bytes will still remain on-premise for quite some time, and that's why we are also committing to supporting data services and information stewards still for a very long time. Several years, right? So they are not going away. Let's say they will stay and they will support you on your on-premise jobs. And actually, to facilitate this combined usage, we also have a promotion that we rolled out a few months ago, and we will run it for the whole of 2021. It's a very simple concept. So if you buy a subscription to the Intelligence Cloud, you will get an exceptional discount on the Data Services Enterprise Edition, so that you can actually use both tools in combination. And just talk to your account executives to have more information about it. I just wanted to throw it as an additional information, because so far we haven't made yet a lot of noise about it, but I would like to advertise it as much as possible, because I think it's a very compelling promotion actually, to help our customers in using both tools in combination. So how does that combination work, right? So let's get into some more detail about it. So we have Data Services and Information Steward mostly. So those are really the main two tools that I would like to focus on today on the on-premise landscape. And then we know that our customers have already started their journey to the cloud, and maybe they're using Amazon S3, or maybe they have something on Azure Data Lake, or they might have a Kafka broker somewhere in the cloud, and so on. And data intelligence is really the data management gateway that can act as the cloud data management product to join the dots and help you to leverage all of your on-premise investment and connect to all of those innovation pieces that you have in the cloud. So, and the idea is exactly to be able to reuse the ETL flows that you have in data services, the glossary terms or the validation rules that you built in Information Steward, reuse all of that and extend all of those capabilities towards the cloud by integrating with all of those sources that the intelligence now supports natively, like Kafka, for example, or all of the cloud object stores, or all of the machine learning engines, right? So going a little bit into more detail, if you think of combining the intelligence and the services, what you can do today is already that you can use the intelligence to orchestrate existing data services jobs on their server on premise, right? And this means that, for example, you can trigger the execution of a job that does something, reading from an on-premise source, does some kind of transformation, and then saves the output of the data into a data lake in the cloud. And then from there, the intelligence can continue the pipeline by combining, I don't know, some Kafka, some MQTT, some Python, and doing something else, and then feeding back the data to towards data services, always via an intermediate staging area like a data lake, right? So that is how it works today. But as I wrote here in the slide, we are also about to release an innovation in this area, because with the next release of Data Intelligence 2107, which will be out hopefully in September timeframe. So of course, with all the usual disclaimers, we will actually release some important innovation in this area, because we will also be able to support direct data exchange between data services ETL flows and the intelligence pipelines. So without the need of any data lake in the middle, let's say. So you will be able to have a data services ETL flow to feed directly at the intelligence pipeline in the cloud, and vice versa. Similarly, when it comes to Information Steward, in the past releases, we have added quite a lot of functionality that relates specifically to Information Steward. So we are now able to import business terms, meaning we are able to import terms from the Information Steward Metapedia into the Intelligence's catalog. We are able to import data quality rules into the Intelligence's rulebooks. And with the last release, so with 2103 that was released end of May, we are also now able to see the metadata that was crawled by Information Steward from within the Intelligence's catalog. So we have a full-blown integration now between the two tools that allows you to connect to any existing Information Steward and reuse everything you did there within the Intelligence catalog. So in terms of scenarios, then, just to give you some ideas of how you can use these tools in combination, imagine, for example, reusing one of the tones of ETL flows that you have built probably with the services, and using that to feed at the intelligence pipeline and extend that data management flow in the cloud by connecting to cloud object stores, to Kafka, factoring in some streaming, doing some streaming analytics, and maybe some machine learning in Python, right? So how powerful can that be without any rip and replace? So without the need of changing or rewriting anything of what you did in the services. And similarly, the other way around. So performing some machine learning in the cloud with an intelligence, so running some Python or R algorithms, and then taking the insight and feeding it back to the services on premise in order to bring it back to some traditional transactional application that you must still be running on premise, right? So with the usual asterisk of what's coming in roadmap. So today, current integration between DI and Data Services is requiring some intermediate staging in a data lake, whereas starting from September, with all usual roadmap disclaimers, we will be able also to have direct data communication between the two tools. Finally, last but not least, Information Steward feeding the intelligence catalog with all of the validation rules, all the glossary terms, all the collected metadata that we had worked in the on-premise landscape with Information Steward. Okay, so this is a quick overview of what I wanted to introduce today. Now I would like to actually quickly show you a tour of the product itself to also give you a more concrete feeling of the things that I just described on slides. So let's, for example, have a look. So sorry, this is the launchpad of SAP Data Intelligence Cloud, where you find the different tiles belonging to the various applications. So you see that we've got metadata exploration. We've got the modeler, which is where we model pipelines for data integration and data processing. We've got the ML Scenario Manager, that is where we can manage actual algorithms and their life cycle for data processing, just to name the main applications that you will find built in data intelligence. Now, if I go to the Metadata Explorer and for example, I browse the glossaries, I can see that in this instance, we have already imported a demo glossary that was imported from Information Steward with 342 terms from the Information Steward Metapedia. And importing something from Information Steward is very straightforward. So you just have a button here, and you can load the Metapedia export from Information Steward, and that gets immediately imported as a glossary in the intelligence. Similarly, if I go and check the rules, you can see that the intelligence support 9 different kinds of rules: accuracy, completeness, conformity, and so on. And again, importing any validation rule that you might have built in Information Steward is straightforward. So you have an import button, and you specify the connection to Information Steward, then you can import existing validation rules in a straightforward way. So let's have a look at the at something that was cataloged already. So let's pick this HANA Cloud instance, for example. So a demo schema. I might pick the customer region view. This is a view in HANA Cloud. And if I check the fact sheet of that view, you can see that this one was profiled already. So you can find the data profiling features that you would expect from a data catalog, actually. So telling you information about the columns and tagging also those columns to try and recognize what they actually contain. Then we provide some lineage in this case. So for example, showing you which were the actual tables that were used in HANA Cloud in order to build this actual view. Lineage is currently relatively limited in the intelligence because it's supported for HANA Cloud, for BW, and for the intelligence itself. But it's one of the things that by end of this year will be greatly extended and improved. So expect quite a lot of improvements on the lineage area, because we want to make it a full-blown enterprise data lineage engine for all of your cloud sources and also on-premise. And then we can check, for example, the relationships, where we can track the relationship between this view and the terms in the business glossary. So here you see that this is tracked to be related to customer type, which is a term that was imported actually from Information Steward, so from the Metapedia. And in this view, we are also applying a data quality rule that was again imported from Information Steward. So you can see that we have this rule that was applied to this view, and in this case, the result is actually quite worrying because the quality of this data set is not that nice. We can go and check. We have this rule that was imported from Information Steward and is applied currently to various different data assets. Most of them weren't even visible to Information Steward, right? So that's the beauty of using the intelligence in combination with Information Steward, and being able to reuse some validation rules that you build for an on-premise landscape and apply them to a cloud source, like we are doing it in this case. Last thing I wanted to show is also how we do self-service data preparation. So I did mention that on-premise we had a tool that was named HANA Agile Data Preparation, and if you look in our cloud portfolio, data preparation is as well factored in data intelligence and covered by data intelligence. So I can click here and create a new data preparation job or edit an existing one, as I'm doing now, and I've got this business-friendly UI where I can quickly create recipes for data preparation. So I don't know, I can go to the country. I see that here I have a mix of different countries and region. I could decide, for example, to replace Italy with another string like Euro 2020 winner, right? So fingers crossed. And I can apply this kind of transformation live on the data preview. So this is just a preview, of course, of the whole data set. But the nice thing of this kind of UI is that while I build this transformation, so this one was a very simple transformation, but the tool can allow you also to do much more complex things like joins and unions and so on. The tool then underneath is tracking a recipe with all of the things that I'm doing. And this recipe internally is actually implemented as a data intelligence pipeline. That pipeline can be executed on the pipeline engine and deployed on the actual data set and scaled for execution on our Kubernetes cluster. So this is one of the nice aspects of having data catalog and data preparation combined with a full-blown data integration engine where we do also pipelining. So we can build recipes and then scale them and execute them as we would do with any other data integration pipeline. And having said that, let me also quickly show you what the pipeline model looked like, so that you have a very quick 5-minute tour of the main areas of the product. So this is an example of a data intelligence pipeline. So it's we call them also graphs internally. So basically, a pipeline is just a sequence of steps of activities that are connected as I said, in a sequence. And these activities internally, they are all deployed as Docker containers on a Kubernetes cluster. So each activity, each step is one Docker container. So we have a very wide pipeline of built-in operators, but being just standard Docker on Kubernetes, it's also relatively easy to bring in your own operator if you want to Dockerize any custom engine that you're using on your side. And among the operators that you find built in, of course, there's a lot of operators concerning ABAP connectivity. So ABAP is one of the engines that we support out of the box. Not surprisingly, connectivity for Kafka, HANA, MQTT, Open APIs, RESTful APIs, and so on. Google pops up a lot of connectivity to several different databases, Oracle, MySQL, DB2, but also Redshift, BigQuery, Azure SQL, and so on. And as I was mentioning, an operator for executing the services jobs, this is the one that you can currently already use for triggering the execution of the services job that is controlled by an on-premise the services server. You can execute in the very same way a SAP BW process chain, a HANA flow graph, and so on. And in the same pipelines, you can mix the execution of any Python script, of any R script, any Go, any JavaScript, any Node.js, right? So this is the amount of flexibility that we provide in the tool, and everything is actually running on Kubernetes. In the iCloud, we manage the Kubernetes node cluster for you, of course. But if you want to deploy this kind of solution on premise, so we've got customers that still want to run data management scenarios on their on-premise landscape completely, this same product is also available as an on-premise tool. So the very same code base, it can be installed on top of various different on-premise Kubernetes distributions like Cisco, Red Hat OpenShift, or SUSE RKE. So don't want to steal too much time. I would like also to make sure that we have time for the Q&A. So let me go back quickly to the slide to make sure that I can complete the overview that I wanted to give you. In terms of customer base, as I said, Data Intelligence was born in 2017, so almost 4 years ago now. Back then, it was still called Data Hub, and it was only an on-premise product. Then it grew. We renamed it to Data Intelligence in 2019, and which is also when we launched the as a service version. And since then, the customer base has exploded, I would say. So today we have hundreds of customers using the product productively. So I'm mentioning this because it's not, let's say, a startup product anymore. You can expect a mature product. Of course, it's still growing a lot. So there's a lot of areas where you will see a lot of innovations coming. In the cloud in particular, we are releasing new releases on a quarterly basis, whereas on-prem, we are currently releasing new releases twice a year. So quite a frequent, I would say, release schedule, but expect the product also to be quite mature. And we do also have now several public customers. Every year we have customers who win the SAP Innovation Award thanks to use cases that they implemented on the intelligence. We do also have several partners who have already built content for SAP Data Intelligence. So here on this slide, you see a few of them, like Lenovo, IBM, Wipro, Reply, Keytree, and so on. Inspired Intellect is also a very active one. And we plan on fostering wider adoption also by the partner ecosystem. So for us, the intelligence is just like a Swiss Army knife, right? So it's a tool that can do several different things, but we want to make sure that we can build a content store, a content ecosystem on top of the intelligence. So both built by SAP ourselves. So we are working thoroughly now to make sure that some of the most common data integration and data processing scenarios are available as templates that you can download for your data intelligence instance, and also built by partners. So for partners, I think this is a great opportunity to actually showcase their intellectual property, bring in their vertical and industry experience, and build content that is ready-made and immediately usable on the intelligence. Finally, last but not least, I also wanted to mention the analyst recognition. So the main quadrant that is relevant for the intelligence is probably the Enterprise Data Fabric Wave from Forrester, because that was really, I would say, more than 90% of the quadrant functionality was really the intelligence. And we are clear leaders there. So it's again a proof that our vision was very innovative in this area. So there are hyperscalers who are now catching up. They are investing, acquiring a lot of functionality, but we've been there since the beginning. In 2017, we invested on Kubernetes since the beginning. I think that the intelligence was probably the very first product that SAP built natively, immediately on Kubernetes from day one, and it was the right bet back then. So it's I think this is one of the reasons why we are leaders. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. So let's open up the discussion and the question and answer. I see that the live and the Q&A was already quite lively. So I guess that Lynn and Eduardo were already managing it. But let's also open up the line so that we can have a live exchange.
Yes, thank you so much, Silvio, for the presentation.
You're welcome.
And demo. For everyone on the call that would like to unmute themselves, please just raise your hand and we can unmute you. I see Mario has
So I see
people raise their hands.
Jeremy was asking, are there plans to allow publishing versioning of custom operators? So currently there's already best practices on how you can use Git, standard Git in combination with the intelligence. So that's currently really the main approach we have, and of course we can follow up with the details there. And I don't know if Lynn is aware of the timing of the plans that we have there, because we've been having, let's say, improvements in terms of better out-of-the-box support for Git in roadmap for quite a while, but as far as I remember, it's not foreseen for at least not for the next release. So at present, we are just continuing with the standard best practice that we've been using for the past couple of years. And okay.
Then should we continue with the people in the line? Okay, let me continue with Mario, who was a little bit quicker. Mario, if you would like to speak up.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really check with SAP Data Intelligence coming into the into the forefront. Will you still need to invest in data services and information steward if you're going to be doing integrations and migrations, etc., or can you just start to rely on data intelligence moving forward, and therefore you don't need to invest in those products anymore?
Oh, that's an excellent question, actually, and thanks for asking. So we clearly see that the future direction is the intelligence. So our view is that all of the growth and the innovation going forward will be on the intelligence. But as I said earlier, we also foresee that we will continue to support data services and information steward for a very long time. So I think we just released a statement to extend the maintenance of the current version of data services enterprise edition, which means also information steward, of course, for another year. But that's because we foresee that we will be releasing data services 4.3. Right, so the release slipped, I think, but it's still planned. So we are planning to release also a new release of data services itself, and that will mean that once we release data services 4.3, it will be guaranteed to be under maintenance at least until 2029, I think, or something like that. So for a very long time. And that means that we think that data services will not disappear. Data services and information steward will not disappear anytime soon. So whether or not you need to continue investing on the services and information steward, that's a very relevant question, I would say. So in my view, and this is, let's say, more an enterprise architect kind of advice that I'm giving, I would keep the services and information stewards to keep the jobs that they're doing today, right? So keeping in mind that you will need to maintain them until all of the jobs that are doing today are still relevant because you haven't switched off yet the sources or the targets that they're integrating today, right? So if you have the services, for example, integrating an Oracle to an on-premise, I don't know, BW or another data warehouse, probably you will still need to run it until those two sources are there. But once you will have completely moved out of those on-premise sources and targets, and you will have moved to the cloud, knowing that in the cloud you can perform cloud data management with data intelligence, you will probably be able to switch off the sources and targets that you had on-prem, and at that stage also switch off the data services that went along with them, right? And this is, by the way, the main reason why we decided to go for a reuse approach in data intelligence rather than a replace or migrate. Okay, so we are not, what the approach we are suggesting is not really to take an existing data services ETL job and migrate it completely to data intelligence. Also, because the two tools are not even 100% functionally equivalent, right? So, because the intelligence was conceived for a very different scope, as you saw. So the idea is that until data services is there, you will be able to reuse existing ETL jobs that will still run in the services itself. And then once that on-premise landscape will be completely, let's say, dismissed, of course, you will be able to switch off also your data services server. Okay.
Thanks, Silvio. That's great. And if you don't have it at all, if you don't have data services and information steward, does that mean you don't need them? If you invest in data intelligence going forward, that's the only tool you need, or do you still need to buy data services and information steward?
That's again a very relevant question. So I would say that in theory and aspirationally, you should not need them, right? So that's where we are thoroughly working towards. So the idea is really to make sure that the intelligence is as self-sufficient as possible. So today, probably there are still some niche areas where, in particular, information steward might be needed because of the current coverage that we have for when it comes, for example, to crawling on-premise data sources. There might also be other cases where you might still need data services for, in particular, some kind of data cleansing jobs that maybe are not yet 100% supported in data intelligence. That is also one of the reasons why we have released the promotion that I mentioned earlier. So if you invest on data intelligence today, you are also able to get data services almost for free between ports. So let's not talk about the precise numbers, but that's the concept.
Great. Thanks, Sylvia.
Because we want, of course, we are moving to that direction to make BI self-sufficient, but there are some cases where you might still need to use, in particular, Information Steward together with it. Okay,
great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right, then let's continue with the next question. So I see Navneet. Can you try to speak?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, thanks, Silvio, for a great insight into the tool.
Thank you.
There's been good learning from this particular, the short demo that you did. I think my questions have been answered already because Mario has already addressed. But just one question which I had was, when it comes to the pipelines that you have in data intelligence, how do you basically see these pipelines getting connected to a larger S4HANA implementations? How well it would adapt if we have S4HANA on premise and if we have S4HANA on cloud?
Yeah, okay, another very relevant question. So can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say today, as I said, we have already a quite wide connectivity into ABAP systems. So connecting into S4HANA, of course, is something you can do at the database level. So using the HANA operators like the HANA client, for example, or the HANA table loader and so on. But you can also connect at the application level, which is very relevant in particular when you're running S4HANA on a runtime database, of course, even for licensing purposes. So the most commonly used operator for connecting and reading from an S4HANA system is the ABAP CDS reader, which is supported out of the box. So you can just drag and drop, and that gives you the possibility to read from any CDS view in ABAP, right? But also we do have an ODP reader for those cases where you might prefer reading from ODPs instead. And we also have the SLT connector that we use for connecting straight. So it's called the SLT connector, but in reality, this operator connects to the DMIS add-on, so the proprietary DMIS add-on that you can install also on older ECC systems to replicate any kind of table from the ABAP stack. So those are the main means. So of course, I summarize it very, very shortly. And they're already widely used today. There are some limitations in terms of performance, in particular when it comes to mass replication from very large systems on a very wide number of tables. And that's where we foresee to release an innovation in Q3, Q4 timeframe this year. Internally, we call it Replication Management Server. I think the final name should be something like Replication Flow, but again, don't get me, so put all the possible disclaimers on this information that I'm saying now. And that will be released both as an embedded functionality within HANA Cloud to basically replace what we were currently doing with SDI in HANA Cloud and support very easily with a very user-friendly UI scenarios where you just need to do mass replication from on-premise to HANA Cloud, but also the same functionality would be released, of course, in the intelligence full use to complement the current operators that we have and help with scaling the performance, in particular when mass replication is needed.
Great, thanks a lot.
Welcome.
All right, then let's get to our last question by Jyoti. All right, Jyoti, you could speak up, and sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Jyoti, I think you're on mute, probably.
Yes, now. We can hear you now, if you can speak up. Oh, maybe not so well. So your audio is not available.
Anyway, guys, let me also just re-emphasize that, of course, for all of the questions that you still have in mind, you can also send us an email to me, Lynn, and Eduardo. We'll be happy to follow.
Actually,
we can hear you now. Okay, good. Not anymore. What happened?
Yeah, your audio is breaking up.
Your audio is
might be better to post it in the chat, but additionally to sending emails, I would definitely recommend to go to community.sap.com, where probably your question has been already asked. You can definitely ask your questions there as well. The open knowledge sharing is
a very good point. Actually, that's the best channel to ask any outstanding question, and we'll be happy to follow it up on the community.
Yeah. And yeah, it was interesting. We could hear you from time to time, Jyoti, but probably best to follow up. We have 2 minutes left now, Silvio. I don't know, any wrap-ups, points that you want to address now with the questions that came in?
No, just the quick follow-up. Of course, you reminded already about SAP Community, which is for us really a crucial source of interaction with customers and partners, and also with SAP colleagues. So everybody's using it really. So please keep it lively, guys, and make sure to raise all your points there and share all of your findings or doubts or content even. And then I just wanted to highlight the other main content that you can explore, like the interactive demo or the trial experience, the interactive use case discovery tool that you and the O'Reilly book on Data Orchestration that you can all find from the SAP Data Intelligence website on sap.com.
Great. Okay, I've posted that in the chat as well, and the slide deck will be made available, of course, in a couple of days. You will see it on our SAP Community Calls page. With that, Silvio, very, very thanks again, and thanks for the audience for joining in.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, also for the lively interaction. Much appreciated.